A lot of big names here from the UK, but great to see a lot of our local South African riders like Ian Schechter supporting us.
Yeah, it's really awesome to have some of the South African legends of motorsport here riding in the Day of Champions. Keith Zeeman and Clive Strugnell had a lot to do with these guys coming down, and we really appreciate that. And it's just awesome to see them. They brought some of the original machines out, like Les van Breda had his Suzuki out here from 1974.
And Van Breda just managing to get in ahead of Mick Grant there. So Van Breda and Mick Grant not taking any prisoners out there. One man who returned 50 years after he rode here when he was only 30 years old was Jim Redmond. We asked him what it was like.
Yeah, I think it's the same. I've only done 3 laps, not really learned where to go again. But it looks the same as I remember it in 62. And if they've done any improvements, then I really haven't noticed. This is the 3rd most important classic motor racing circuit in the world. There's a whole crew of us go around Europe, people that I raced with in the 60s and 50s, and we have a lot of fun. And unfortunately, a few of them are passing on. Ernst Siller, one of the really great German riders, died a couple of years ago. And we seem to be losing them. I'll be 80 next year myself, and I still think I'm about 21 when I get on a bike.
Rebuilding and maintaining classic motorcycles takes lots of effort, time and patience, not to mention wheelbarrows full of cash. Ian Grout owns and maintains 5 of the bikes that took part during the National Series.
Well, it started with Redmond. I went to the Isle of Man with Redmond in, I think it was 92. And I was free of motorcycle lighters. I didn't have it, And every bike they gave Jimmy, 6 times world champion, it blew up. So I said, listen, Jim, you're my hero. This is rubbish. I said, I'll build you a 250 replica RC163 on one condition. He said, what's that? I said, don't die on me, because he was getting on a bit. Anyway, 2 years later, he's ridden the bike a lot, So, and from then, the next year we were there, they always lie about the weather. And they had a champions race, and they kept all these old clunkers, these old British singles down in the lane by the police station. And when they lit them all up, it was such an awesome sound of such a, it's a forgotten era. I mean, the 2-strokes obsoleted these bikes instantly, So, and they just disappeared. But they're a big, resurrection of the racing in the UK with them. So we started to build them, myself and John Boswell from the Naysville Museum. We started to build these old clunkers up, but they're a nightmare to build because nothing fits. So you come back with a load of bits from overseas, and then you spend the next 6 months getting it all to fit together, But they really do go.
Top place, very, very fast, very grippy. Shame there's a big oil leak on the hairpin bend at the bottom, but everything's really good, very, very good indeed. Yeah.
So the question is, have you got the balls for Potters?
I'm getting there. I'm nearer. I was there, now I'm there.
For a man that probably has the best job in the entire world, we caught up with world-renowned motorcycle journalist Sir Alan Cathcart, who spends his time reviewing the latest and greatest, most high-powered machines from all around the world of motorcycle sport.
Well, I'm very lucky that I'm one of the few journalists who's given the keys to all the great motorcycles down the years, from factory Grand Prix bikes down to one-off specials that somebody's gone and spent a good part of their life creating. I suppose the best example of that is the Briton. John Britton in New Zealand made these wonderful handmade motorcycles that were his own take on how a motorcycle ought to have become.
It was his first time visit to East London, and he was suitably impressed.
I find it a surprisingly beautiful place. Surprisingly, because nothing's ever written about it abroad. You don't hear about East London, you don't hear about this wonderful coastline. And you also don't hear about this circuit. As far as most people outside South Africa are concerned, East London Grand Prix circuit stopped existing when John Surtees won the Formula 1 World Championship here, and that was it. End of story, turn the page. And yet you have this incredible location for what seems to be a very demanding and very enjoyable circuit to ride or drive on.
Although we had a lot of international personalities at the track, our very own SA champion from days gone by, Les van Breda, was at the track as well. It was his first time back in many, many years, but he was having fun.
I've been involved ever since I never really stopped, I last rode at the circuit in 1969 on a 350 Suzuki. And then they stopped racing here for quite a few years, so for me it's the first time back in a long, long time.
He even brought with his very special Suzuki from 1974. This bike was used to compete in the 75 SA Championship.
Yeah, I've had this since 1974. It was sent to me by a Suzuki factory to compete in the 75 South African Championship, which I did, and I've had the bike ever since. When it came out, they always said that the engine was 10 years ahead of the chassis, and it really shows around here. It's actually still, it's fast, and it's quite hard to ride over the bumps and stuff because the suspension is having a hard time, you know.
The track has seen its fair share of well-known names. One of those competing on the day was Ian Schechter, who rode on the track for the first time in the 60s.
Well, it was in 1966 on a little Yamaha 100 Twin. A friend of mine from university, he brought it around to the house and actually wanted Jody to race it. And Jody was out, fortunately, and I said, well, can I have a ride? And I went around the block and said, hell, I'll race this tomorrow. And we managed to go and schmuck a license from the AA, and I raced for my first race then on that borrowed bike. Yeah. Well, you can never replace a corner like Potter's. You know, they just don't have those corners anymore. And I still remember that that corner is just such a test, and it's such a thrill if you can get it flat in the right car. Obviously, I mean, slow cars it's easy, but when you've got a fast car, you can get that corner right, you know you've achieved something. Besides that, the setting's great, and I prefer this kind of circuit. You know, when you look at the modern circuits on television that Filco's designing, well, it's just corner, 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 no passing, no racing. Whereas here you've got straights, you can slipstream, you know, it's a classic racetrack. And you can also, as a spectator, I remember when we sat at A Park in the Grand Prix days, there were 1,000, it was full, and you could see the whole circuit. So, yeah, it's a great, great racetrack.
It would take a lot of everybody doing a couple of upgrades on the bike. Most of the riders wanting to put bigger sprockets on to try and get more pace out of the bikes for Potters.
Yeah, well, you know, it's one of the few remaining long circuits in the world. The original Grand Prix circuits had very long straights, and it's the longest circuit in South Africa. So the bikes reach their top speeds here.
Alan Walker's Fogarty or ex-Fogarty World Championship Superbike giving trouble as well.
Yeah, and the guys had problems with that bike. The alternator bolts, the flywheel bolts actually sheared off and eventually affected the charging system. So the guys really had to work quite hard to keep that machine going, and eventually they won the series. The races here, not the series, but the races here in East London with the machine.
A couple of really weird and wonderful machines there. That's Doug Ibbison on that NSR Honda. It's a 3-cylinder 500cc Honda. So Jim Redmond's RC163, unmistakable sound of that bike. That's Les from Bradar riding Robbie Breakspear's Honda. Les's Suzuki giving some gearbox trouble, so pretty sad. Didn't really wanted to see him use that bike on this circuit as they get off the line for the last of the parade laps. And look at that from Bradar at the front and leading the way. I noticed a lot of the British riders brought their own mechanics.
Yeah, quite a number of the guys who came out from the UK weren't riding. You know, a couple of them are very well known and dedicated mechanics. But it's really great to see the commitment and the dedication from guys who aren't even riding, really.
Coming out of Rifle, now into Potter's full read, going in there first. There's Ian Schechter, the unmistakable green and black leathers as he goes through. Pierre Leroux taking part in the ZX10, but hang on, that's not a classic bike. I mean, I think he just wanted to ride with the great names.
Yeah, Chris van Vieren's machine, he also races it in the National ZX10 Cup, and Pierre Leroux riding it there because Pierre actually lent his machine to Ian Schechter to ride. And Ian said that he hadn't ridden in about 20 years, and it's the best fun he's had in the last 20 years.
Talking about Ian Schechter, there he goes through shot now on that Yamaha, but he still lives in East London after all these years.
Yeah, it's absolutely awesome having him riding here. And big thank you to Keith Zeeman and Clive Strugnell, who organised, these guys to come here. And it's just so wonderful to have Ian Schechter here because, the Schechter name is synonymous with East London.
Jim Redmond going through in that wonderful sounding RC163 as they come into Beacon now. Look at bike number 88, that's Les from Badan, Robbie Breakspear's Honda, Pierre Leroux on the green ZX10 as well, and the South Africans are at the front here. They want to show they've got the metal to mix it up with the best. Yeah,
well, the one thing I'll say is that South Africans are really up in the forefront of talent, and historically have always done very well when the TT series were run here.
As far as historic racing, what are the chances of us getting this series back at the track next year?
All the indications are that The guys have really enjoyed East London, and Mick Grant said that we'll definitely be back next year. So we really trust, and we'll make the greatest effort to make sure that this series actually builds, so that it becomes bigger and better in the future.
Les from Bradal leading them into the complex now, going through the S's and not racing actually, but all the greats just having a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really what this is all about. Guys can come and ride and just have a lot of fun. It's not all about the winning, although our vision is for the TT series to be absolute balls to the wall racing, if I could put it that way.
Buddy Ekron going to the picture here. This is Mick Grant on the last lap. I think this is the part where he loses his chain. Yes, it is. There it goes. You don't see that very often on the racetrack. Getting a camera shot of a bike losing its chain, and there's nothing left there, Mick. It's not shaft driven, but you're going to have to push it back to the pits. So we catch the front runners now coming around for that last lap, and Pierre Leroux slowing right down to that ZX10. He wants to give Les from Bradar a chance to come by. Bradar slingshots it out of the corner. And now Pierre gives it gas. They're going to come down, but it looks like Les will just be pipping him on the line. That kind of concludes our racing action. Everybody having a lot of fun on the day. Roy Thersby, the man who brought the Ducatis out, is from the UK. Had a lot of fun out here. And I think a lot of the overseas riders really impressed with the circuit. A man that really loved racing here. Mick Grant, the first time for him at the Grand Prix circuit, but he'll be back next year, so he says.
We've had a fabulous weekend. This track of the three is just completely different. The high speed corners just make it really special, and it takes a lot of learning, but I think we've all towards the end really got the hang of it, and can't wait to get back next year really.
A great day of classic racing comes to the end, but as Neville Fisher from Border Motorsport explains, it was a rather significant day for the track to get all the great names together one more time.
Well, it is very significant because in 1936 we had the International South African Tourist Trophy at the East London Grand Prix circuit. So what we're doing is reviving the South African Tourist Trophy. And a big thank you to local promoter as well, Dave Kirkman, for getting our main sponsor Safmarine on board, because they subsidised the container that brought the motorcycles out from the UK. Well, Clive Strugnell and Mick Grant actually organised the tour for the British riders, and about 18 of them came out, 18 motorcycles, with quite a number of world famous personalities, and the indications are that they were extremely impressed with the circuit itself, and we're really looking forward to bigger and better things in the future.
So as the sun sets on a great day's action, we bid you farewell from East London. That concludes our coverage from the Springbok TT Classic Racing Series. We hope to catch you again for the same event next year. All of the action from the Safmarine SA TT Revival Series is proudly brought to you by Safmarine, Bike SA, and supported by Tourism Buffalo City.